Guys, today we'll be talking about brachial plexus. Welcome to Photizomed YouTube channel. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment in this comment section. So today we'll be talking about the brachial plexus. It's a major nerve network supplying the upper limb, and it's actually formed by the ventral rami of the lower four cervical nerves and the greater part of the ventral ramus of the first thoracic nerve, that's C5 to T1, and begins in the neck and extends to the axilla. Plexus means network, so the brachial plexus is actually a mix up of the axons of C5 to T1, and so when they are repackaged like that, they will result in terminal branches like the radial nerve, musculocutaneous nerve, the axillary nerve. So we'll be talking about them as we continue. So you can see the brachial plexus extending from the neck into the axilla, passing posterior and inferior to the clavicle. So the function of the brachial plexus include the motor innervation of all the muscles of the upper limb except the trapezius muscle and the levator scapulae, and it also supplies all the cutaneous innervation of the upper limb except the area of the axilla supplied by the intercostobrachial nerve and just above the point of the shoulder by supraclavicular nerve, and the dorsal scapular area which is supplied by the cutaneous branches of the dorsal rami. The variation of the brachial plexus include the prefixed brachial plexus, where the C4 ventral ramus contribute to the brachial plexus, and in postfixed brachial plexus, the T2 ventral ramus contributes to the brachial plexus. So in prefixed brachial plexus, as C4 ventral ramus is contributing, the contribution of T1 will be reduced, and in postfixed brachial plexus, as T2 ventral ramus is contributing, the contribution of C5 will be reduced. So you can see in this image, you can see the contribution of C4, and you can also see the contribution of T2. So contribution of C4, that's prefix, contribution of T2, that's postfixed. So the formation of brachial plexus is actually made up of the root. So after the root, we have the trunk. After the trunk, we have the cords. Then we have divisions. Then we have cords. Then we have branches. So we're talking about each and every one of them. So we have five roots, and these are formed by these are the anterior rami of the C5, C8, and T1 nerves. So they usually pass with the subclavian artery through the gap between the scalenus anterior and medius muscle. So the roots are in between the scalenus anterior and medius muscle, and they unite in the inferior part of the neck to form the trunk. So you can see the roots here coming from between the scalenus medius and scalenus anterior. Those are muscles of the neck. So they are passing together with the subclavian artery into the axilla. So the trunk is shortly formed after the roots. So it emerges the root emerges from the intervertebral foramina, and they unite to form three trunk. So the ventral rami of C5 and C6 roots, they form the superior trunk, while the ventral rami of C7 continues as the middle trunk. The ventral rami of C8 and T1 forms the inferior trunk, and they emerge from the lateral border of the scalenus anterior and cross the posterior triangle of the neck. So you can see the C5 and C6 forming the upper trunk, and then C7 forming the middle trunk, C8 and T1 forming the lower trunk. So then we have six divisions. Each of these trunks they divide into anterior and posterior divisions. So the anterior division is responsible for flexors and pronators. In other words, if there's any damage to the anterior division of any of those trunks, it will affect the flexors and pronators of the upper limb. And then the posterior division, if they're affected, it will cause the paralysis or lead to the paralysis of the extensors and supinators of the upper limb. And you can find the divisions just behind the clavicle. The divisions are posterior to the clavicle. The trunk is superior to the clavicle. Divisions are posterior to the clavicle. So this is the root. You can see the trunk, then the division. The division is posterior to the clavicle. So talking about cords now, the cords are from the anterior division of the upper and middle trunk unite to form the lateral cords. We have three cords, so lateral, medial, and posterior. So anterior division of upper and middle trunk unite to form the lateral cord, while the anterior division of the lower trunk forms the medial cord. All three posterior divisions from each of three cords all unite to form the posterior cord. The cords are named according to their position relative to the axillary artery and at the outer border of the first strip. That's where you can find the cords. So they are inferior to the clavicle. Cords are inferior to the clavicle. They are the outer border of the first strip, and they are named according to their position relative to the axillary artery. So you can see the side branches of the brachial plexus now. So we're talking about the side branches of the brachial plexus. Before we continue, I just want to show you the image of the cords again to help you remember. So you can see the divisions. So you can see the cords here. So let's move on to the side branches of the brachial plexus. So you can see the roots from C5, you have the dorsal nerve coming, and then from C5, C6, that's the upper trunk, the suprascapular nerve is coming out, and then long thoracic nerve is from C5, C6, and C7. That's the nervation to serratus anterior. It's also called nerve to serratus anterior. And then you can see the lateral pectoral nerve coming from the lateral cord, thoracodorsal nerve, upper subscapular nerve, and lower subscapular nerve coming from the posterior cord, while the medial pectoral nerve, medial brachial cutaneous nerve, medial antebrachial cutaneous nerve is coming from the medial cord, and the axillary nerve and the radial nerve they are the terminal branches of the posterior cord. Musculocutaneous nerve and medial nerve, they are terminal branches of the lateral cord. So medial nerve is taking parts from lateral cord and from medial cord, and then ulnar nerve is a terminal branch of the medial cord. So let's talk about each of the side branches before we move to the terminal branches. So from the roots, we have dorsal scapular nerve that is derived from C5, and then it serves as a motor innervation to rhomboid major and minor muscles. And the long thoracic nerve is derived from C5 to C6. C5, C6, and C7, and it innervates the serratus anterior muscle. The is also the nerve to scalene and longus colli. So there's the nerve to scalene and longus colli. Those are muscles in the neck. So their nerve roots are C5 to C8, and then branch to phrenic nerve. That's C5. That's the innervation to the diaphragm. Phrenic nerve is the innervation to the diaphragm. So you can see the image here also again. Dorsal scapular, suprascapular, upper trunk, middle trunk, subclavius is coming from upper trunk. That's the innervation of subclavius muscle. So you can see the image. So talking about the branches of the brachial plexus, from the lateral cord, we have the lateral pectoral nerve, which has the nerve root of C5, C6, and C7, just similar to serratus anterior innervation. That's long thoracic nerve. So it innervates the pectoralis major, that's the clavicular or the upper head of the pectoralis major, and also the pectoralis minor. So the lateral cord also form the lateral root of the median nerve, that's contributing the C5 and C7 nerve root. So you can see the image here again. So from the medial cord, the medial pectoral nerve C8 and T1, those are the nerve root of the medial pectoral nerve. It innervates the pectoralis major and minor, and the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, that's the medial brachial cutaneous nerve. The nerve root of C8 and T1 innervate the medial portion of the arm, that's the skin, the medial portion of the skin of the arm, and the medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm innervate the medial antebrachial, that is also known as medial antebrachial cutaneous nerve. It innervate the medial half of the skin of the forearm with the nerve roots C8 and T1. So the medial root of the median nerve contributes C8 and T1 to the median nerve. I hope we got that. So let's move on to so you can see that in the image here. So we're moving on to the supraclavicular parts. So four branches from the roots and trunk. They are approachable through the neck. So those are dorsal long thoracic, nerve to subclavius, and suprascapular nerve. Those are supraclavicular branches of the brachial plexus. So they come out from the brachial plexus above the clavicle. So they're either coming from the root or from the trunk. So the muscular branches from all five to scalene and longus colli muscle, and then the C5 roots of phrenic nerve. So infraclavicular, these ones are coming either from the cords or from the branches. So the branches arise from the cord and they're approachable through the axilla. So the lateral cord gives 3 branches, medial and posterior cord gives 5 branches. So the primary innervation include C5 and C6. If there's any damage to the nerve root C5 and C6, it will affect shoulder muscles and elbow flexors. And then C7 and C8, it will affect elbow extensors and forearm muscles. And then for T1, it will affect the intrinsic muscles of the hand. So the terminal branches are the musculocutaneous. There are 5 of them: musculocutaneous, axillary, median, radial, and ulnar nerve. So the terminal branches are mixed nerve containing both sensory and motor axons. So there are five terminal branches. First, we have the musculocutaneous, which is derived from the lateral cord with the nerve root C5, C6, and C7. It innervates the flexors of the arm. That's the anterior compartment of the arm, like the bicep brachii, the brachialis, coracobrachialis. So it carries sensation from the lateral side of the forearm. That's the radial side of the forearm. So we also have the ulnar nerve is from the medial cord, and the motor innervation is intrinsic is for the intrinsic muscles of the hand, and the sensory innervation is from the medial 1.5 digits. The median arm from both the lateral, that's C6 and C7, and medial cord C8 and T1, that's the source of the median nerve. The motor innervation is to most of the flexors muscles in the forearm and the intrinsic muscles of the thumb. So the innervation of the hand is shared by the median nerve and the ulnar nerve. So the sensory innervation is from the lateral, that's the radial side, 3.5 digits to the thumb side. So the thumb, the first two fingers, and half of the fourth finger. So the axillary nerve has nerve roots C5 and C6 and is derived from the posterior cord. It offers the innervation to deltoid and teres minor muscle. So axillary nerve innervates only these two muscles, deltoid and teres minor muscles, they act on the shoulder. So sensory innervation is from the skin just below the point of the shoulder. The radial nerve takes its roots from all the nerve roots. So that's from C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1. So it's derived from the posterior cord, and it is called the great extensor nerve because it innervates every extensor in the upper limb. So because it innervates the extensor muscles of the elbow, of the wrist, and fingers, so it takes sensory innervation from the skin on the dorsum of the hand on the radial side. So you can see the terminal branches again: musculocutaneous, axillary, median, radial, and ulnar nerves. So thank you for listening. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.